it.
Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome to a brand new and live edition of On to the Next One on this Sunday, February 13th, 2022. And for those who watch the wonderful game of American football, yes, it is Super Bowl Sunday. The big game goes down later on today between the Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. Of course, as a unit here at MMA Fighting, we are rooting for the Cincinnati Bengals for our good pal and colleague Damon Martin. But we are here to do some matchmaking for some of the notable names coming out of UFC 271 last night in Houston, Texas. And we appreciate all of you wonderful people joining us this morning. So I'm sure a lot of you are sleep deprived after a memorable evening in Houston. I am Mike Heck, and as you can see, joining me, as always, the co-host, the co-matchmaker, the best friend, and the Prince of Positivity, Mr. Alexander K. Lee. Good morning, AK. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Mr. Michael, my best friend. I'm excited. I'm in a good mood. I thought that Saturday's show was fantastic. Like you said, we're pumped up. Super Bowl Sunday. We're very pumped up for our boy, Damon Martin. Go Bengals. Hashtag Eternal Flame. Why did this Eternal Flame? Does no one care? Does no one make this Bengals connection? Am I the only one making this joke? I should check on Twitter. Someone else has to be doing this. But yes, hopefully. Apologies for all our West Coast Rams fans out there. But we at MMA Fighting, most of us rooting for the Bengals, which would just be absolutely freaking insane and also a very good time for David Martin. But we're not here to talk about the Super Bowl entirely, are we, Mike? Because we got a hell of a show.
Yes, we have a lot to get to. There are so many submissions. I'm sure we're going to get a bunch more in the comment section. So if you have matchmaking ideas, leave them in here. We'll try to get to as many as we can. I have a feeling this is going to be just a crazy show because there's just a lot going on. So let's get right into this thing. And let's talk about AK Israel Adesanya's successful title defense over Robert Whittaker. Close fight, right? Much more competitive this time around. Whittaker fought well, just not enough out of him to sway any of the judges in his favor. Although I certainly thought, and I predicted this from Jump Street, we were going to take a trip to Split Decision City. We're going to see something weird and crazy considering they were in Texas. And we did see some very weird scorecards throughout the night. Good win for Izzy. A lot of people may not have been super high on the performance. I was, because it's just so difficult to defend these titles over and over again against these fighters who are going to bring their absolute best to them. But Adesanya gets title defense number 4. He says it's number 5 because of the interim title thing. I don't think that argument would ever hold up in court, but this seems easy, right, AK? Jared Cannonier viciously knocks out Derrick Brunson earlier in the night. We're knocking 2 names off of the board right away, are we not?
Yeah, that's an easy one. It's definitely malpractice if they do anything but that. Jared Cannonier has been a good company guy, other than shouting out on live television. I'm broke as F, or whatever he said after one of his wins. I'm sure, he didn't get punished for that. I'm sure the UFC didn't love the optics of that situation, but he's an exciting fighter. He gets knockouts. I don't know. I know everyone's saying, "Oh, whatever. He's just going to be the next one to get knocked down by Izzy." But look, this is how champions are made. This is how championship runs are made. And if people want to see him someday, I know a lot of people are talking about it, reach the legacy of an Anderson Silva, come close to that 10 straight title defenses. Again, even if you do the Adesanya math, he's only halfway there. 5 more championship wins is a long way to go. I'm skeptical that he makes it, but if he is going to make it, he needs fresh challengers. That's exactly what Jared Cannonier is. So I think Jared Cannonier is a legitimate threat. Of course, I would pick Adesanya. I think he'd probably be pretty heavy favorite opening, probably like minus 250, maybe minus 300 by fight night. I don't know. I just don't know if there's a lot of faith in Cannonier, which is strange because I think he's done a great job and everything you can do to earn that. So yeah, easy work for us, easy work for the listeners. I think for the most part, pretty sure that's the direction everyone was heading in, other than a few odd suggestions we'll get to later. But Adesanya versus Jared Cannonier, whenever they're ready to go, UFC just put it together.
Yeah, I mean, is this fight going to get everybody fired up? Is this going to be the casual fight fans kind of a middleweight title fight? Probably not. But when you have the type of performance that Cannonier had last night, the promo he cut after the fact, you just don't need to be too cute or creative with this one since it fell in your lap. It's easy peasy. So you just go ahead and book this fight. Adesanya's wanted it for a while. He just signed a new deal. You want to make the man happy, you go ahead and give him this fight. Adesanya wants this fight to happen in June. That's 4 months away. And we've seen Cannonier maybe a time or two make that kind of turnaround, but normally it's like 5-6 months, even more, before he turns around and gets back in there. But a lot of times he's dealing with different injuries and trying to heal up. But I don't know if he'll want to turn around that quick, because he might only get one shot at this thing. Does he want to just turn right around in June? I don't really know, but June, August, whenever, that fight is likely going to happen, barring anything absolutely insane. But on the flip side, a little more of a difficult matchmaking decision, AK, because we have Robert Whittaker, who, even though he lost, I still think he's the second best middleweight on planet Earth. He's kind of in that Colby Covington-esque position where if the champion wasn't in the picture, he'd probably have the belt right now. And I've said it many times before. It's Izzy. A couple of notches down from there is Whittaker. And then like several notches down from there, with all due respect, you got the Vittoris, you got the Cannoniers, etc. So this is more of a selfish pick for Whittaker. I really want to see the fight between him and Marvin Vettori. I think it makes sense right now. This can easily headline a fight night. Yeah, you could do the Brunson rematch. Sure, both guys are coming off of losses. It's seemingly Brunson's final fight, if what he says is actually true. You could do the Strickland fight. I see a lot of comments for that. There's a lot of options, but I really want to see that battle for the number 2 spot between Whittaker and Vettori. What say you?
Yeah, you're right about the notches, and you're not speaking in hypotheticals, because Whittaker was the champion when Israel Adesanya wasn't in the picture, right? Before Izzy came to the UFC, Whittaker was the champion. So we know this. Colby Covington, unfortunately, did not have that luxury. Him and Usman have been in the UFC pretty much for the same time for the most part, and Usman got to the belt first, making sure that Covington would never actually get his hands on it, despite some really strong performances in championship fights. And we also know Whittaker is, like you said, Whittaker and Izzy are leagues above, because Whittaker fought Cannonier and has beaten him. So again, it's not a hypothetical to say like, oh, how much better is Whittaker than Cannonier? Well, we know they fought and Whittaker won. So yes, the clear 1A and 1B, or even 1 and 2, he is Izzy pretty clearly above Whittaker. And again, I keep telling people like that I don't think that main event was like deserves to be that criticized or Adesanya's strategy, because like we said, Whittaker is so clearly a step above everyone else, and that is like one of the maybe the best, or like the 90% version of Robert Whittaker that we got. And it's still, and Adesanya still controlled the fight. So that's how good he is. That's how good Whittaker is. That's how high quality that main event was, even if it was light on like thrilling moments and the highlights and things like that. So I understand that. I understand why people, didn't love it. I did go with the Brunson rematch only because I've been pushing for Vettori Strickland pretty hard. I think I probably mentioned it on more than one show. They are friends, but I think they'd put that aside if it was like a good main event opportunity. A title shot was promised, something like that. It'd be promised to Strickland, not to Vettori. But I don't think it'd be unreasonable to see in the fight. So I've been pushing for that hard. I can't go back on it yet. Yeah, I think a Whittaker versus Vettori or a Strickland fight would be pretty fun. But because I have that still out there in the Otno universe, I will have to go with a Brunson rematch. The first fight was a while ago. Just want to see where both guys are. I want to see where Brunson is after taking a loss like this, because his confidence was through the roof. Very tough loss to take. I wonder how he would look and how motivated he would be to avenge a previous loss. I think he'd love to get the Whittaker fight back. So I'm happy going that direction.
Man, Liam, you are just on another level today. What is going on here? Smile. It's Sunday, the day of freedom, the day of the Lord is brought.
Well,
let's relax here.
He is correct.
The Covington comparison works.
But he is an interim champ. That's true. He was
right. I didn't say he never won the title. I said that Whittaker is in a similar. Whittaker was the freaking world champion.
Yes.
But I'm saying right now they're in similar positions, because if Usman wasn't the welterweight champion, Covington would probably be the welterweight champion right now. Much like if Adesanya wasn't the middleweight champion, Whittaker would probably be the middleweight champion. That's what I'm saying.
I think most people would understand we mean undisputed. Quote, well, as undisputed as you can be in combat sports, undisputed. Because I don't think anyone, back then would say like, oh well, Carlos Condit was a champ at the same time as GSP. No, he was the interim champ, which is a great achievement, but we don't go around saying, praising him for being like an all-time great champ. He held a belt. Same with Dustin Poirier, he held a belt. There's a reason these guys, people talk about them quote unquote not winning the big one, which is always a kind of a bullcrap thing to say in sports, but that is kind of how we measure success, right? The undisputed title. So that's what we mean when we say champ. We're not going to clarify interim champ every time. Come on.
Yeah. A lot of, just a lot of different ideas here. And that's a pretty good position for Rob to be in. It's a pretty good position for the UFC to be in, because people still want to see Robert fight and there's options for him. So let's move ahead to the MVP of the night and maybe the MVP of our hearts, AK. Tai Tuivasa Never has the heartbreak of a collective group of MMA fans led to so many smiles, because as much as we love Derrick Lewis, and it really hurt a lot of us, and it sucked to see him getting knocked out the way that he got knocked out. If there is anybody to do it, it's Tai Tuivasa. And what a showing it was for him. What a performance. What a chin that man has. Overcomes the early storm, took some bombs from Derrick Lewis in that first round, and then lands that elbow to put the Black Beast out. Huge win for Tai Tuivasa. Absolutely massive, who is now a major player in the UFC's heavyweight division. If I said that to you a year ago, I don't think you would have believed me, AK. So now where do we go from the just absolutely surging Tai Tuivasa right now?
I just want to say there's a comment from No Mas Por Favor saying, "I knew Derrick was getting destroyed." Guys, that's not called getting destroyed. I saw a lot of like Lewis, like, oh, Lewis crapped the bed again. I'm like, Lewis was beating Tuivasa's ass. I don't know how you explain Tuivasa surviving those flurries. I mean, there's a lot been said about him being like more mature, obviously being more focused, which I believe, which I do think is a key to his recent win streak. But there's no explaining, how you survive those, because he was TKO'd or KO'd by Junior Dos Santos before. So he's lost. He's been finished by strikes. It's not like he's like invincible. So we've seen him get knocked out. I don't know how Lewis, again, couldn't quite land that kill shot. I think it's a credit again to Tuivasa's toughness. I think his awareness on defense. I think that's a reason why the referee was very smart, and I don't think even came close to stepping in. Tuivasa was always intelligently defending himself. He was rocked, he was hurt, but he was, always intelligently defending himself. Excuse me. So again, just a really, really amazing outcome for him. But he took a lot of damage in there. So it was super, super tough. I struggled with this one because there's this cluster at the top with Ciryl Gane and Francis Ngannou and Steve Miocic. Of course, John Jones presumably stepping in at some point. So I had to play it safe here and give Tuivasa the Curtis Blades Chris Daukaus winner. That's happening March 26th, so fairly soon. And then either of those guys presumably becomes the number one contender for Chris Daukaus. Would be weird, but I don't know. Maybe if he beats both those guys, he'll deserve it. Number one contender for the interim or what could soon be the undisputed title, depending how they handle the Francis situation.
To answer Tristan's question here, Derrick Lewis is 2-2 in the UFC. Derrick has probably fought in Houston a million times in his come up, but in the UFC he's 2-2. He's got a knockout win. Victor Pesta, knocked out win over Victor Pesta.
Wow, there's a name.
He's got the decision win over Alir Tifi, and then he's gotten finished in his last two to Ciryl Gane and Tai Tuivasa. So, I mean, I was telling you about this off air, AK. If we were living in the Bellator world, we would be getting ready for Tai Tuivasa versus Ciryl Gane. That's what we'd be preparing for.
Good.
That's what they would do, because it would be the meritocratic way, right, AK? Rules rule, yes. Meritocracy, all that stuff.
I have no problem with it.
That's what Bellator does. So when people complain about Bellator's matchmaking, and then they complain about the UFC's matchmaking when they say this guy deserves this and this guy deserves this, this is Bellator matchmaking.
This is how we got Bader versus Congo too.
Exactly. But the UFC understands that from a business perspective, that would be a horrendous idea, because you have a potential star in your hands. And while, yes, Tai Tuivasa could beat Ciryl Gane because it's a fight, he'd probably have to land a big shot. Chances are stylistically that'd be an absolute nightmare. And let's be honest, it probably wouldn't be that fun to watch. It just wouldn't. So I'm going to stay away from that one. Although it would make sense on paper, I hate the idea of matching Tai Tuivasa versus Ciryl Gane. I couldn't dislike that anymore. And I'm kind of with you. Like, this is just so tough because we really have to wait and see what happens with this division before we can actually matchmake. Because Francis Ngannou is about to have surgery next month. Who knows what the future looks like? Who knows if he's even going to fight in the UFC again? Although it seems like Dana White and the UFC, they're trying to get something done here. But with Ngannou out, they'll probably go the interim title route. They'll likely go John Jones versus Stipe Miocic so they can make it happen. But as history tells us, AK, we are dealing with two gentlemen who, if the terms are not what they want, they will just walk away from all of it and not care one iota about it. They just will not care. They'll just be like, peace out, I'm done. So we have to wait and see, unfortunately. But Tai kind of wants to take some time off, which is probably a good thing for him right now. So my answer is his next fight will be for the interim heavyweight title. Whether he gets thrown right in there or he gets the winner of a potential John Jones-Stipe fight, he's fighting next because we don't know what's going to happen with Francis. So the interim title will probably be put on the line. We'll have probably an interim title fight. We'll probably see, there's a chance we see an interim title defense. Tai Tuivasa will get one of those two fights because I think you have to do that. You got to ride this Tai Tuivasa train until the wheels fall off. And a loss doesn't really hurt him that bad as long as it's somewhat fun and somewhat intriguing. And Cyril Gane, great fighter, future world champion in my opinion. That one just doesn't seem all that entertaining to me right now. Now for Derrick Lewis, you could throw him in a fight night main event against anybody and people will get excited. They'll watch it. I think they'll probably go with the winner of the UFC London main event between Alexander Volkov and Tom Aspinall. Okay, but you could throw him in there with anybody and it works. But my official, I will say this, because we're talking Otno points, my official Otno point pick changes if Greg Hardy beats Sergey Spivak. Because if that happens, you do Derrick Lewis versus Greg Hardy 1 trillion %, right?
Yeah, I saw a lot of people throw that one out there. Again, I'm assuming and hoping Greg Hardy loses and we just never have to mention this POS again. But yeah, I obviously it would be a very easy fight for the UFC to market. Derrick Lewis has wanted it for a long time. Ever since, of course, ever since Greg Hardy, I think, debuted with the UFC, he's been saying like, he does. I think people are aware, of course, of Greg Hardy's history. Derrick Lewis not a fan of it, and so it sounds like it would be a pleasure for him to pummel Greg Hardy in the cage. I know a lot of people want to see that. I'm against it. I don't care. I don't think Greg Hardy deserves to even step into the cage with someone like Derrick Lewis, with a fighter of Derrick Lewis's caliber. But you can't argue. Again, you can't argue with what would sell. It would definitely get. It would be, if it happened, one of the most 10, for better or for worse, probably one of the 10 most talked about fights of the year. So again, it's not for me. It's not for me. But I understand the will of the people. So. Yeah. I'm waving my magic wand on this one. I don't think it's very unlikely it's going to happen, but I do want to see Lewis fight Stipe Miocic. This has come up on Otno many times. The timing is just never right. It doesn't feel like Stipe has any interest in wanting to fight Derrick Lewis, but it's a fresh matchup. I would love to see that. Because I just think Stipe should have to. I do feel like he should have to maybe earn his way back to a title shot. I know he's quote unquote the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. I know he's done more than enough to demand only title fights going forward, but I think a fight with Derrick Lewis would be really good, and you could have that main event something, or a 5-round co-main event. Not that it would go 5 rounds, but a 5-round co-main event of a pay-per-view. Pay them what they deserve and make that fight happen. I think it'd be cool. So this is a magic wand pick, not really necessarily what I expect to happen.
Okay, so we already talked about Jared Cannonier. There's so much going on with UFC 271. So let's just jump down to the lightweight division. Huge win for Renato Moicano in a fight that was really, really easy to break down, but hard to predict because this is going to go one of two ways, right? Alexander Hernandez was just going to go out there and bolt Renato Moicano in the first round, or Renato Moicano would weather the storm and probably win the fight if it got to round 2. What happened was Moicano had a pretty darn good first round and then just annihilated Hernandez in the second round. And I know, to the delight of a lot of MMA fans out there, because people just don't like this guy, but he submits Hernandez on pay-per-view in the second round. So in a way, Renato Moicano probably owes Alexander Hernandez a little bit of a debt of gratitude because he got to fight on a main card. And if Hernandez didn't say what he said, probably doesn't happen. But great win from Moicano. 2 straight finishes, 3-1 over his last 4, finishing all of these wins. He looks great at 155. AK, I'm going to jump the line here because people are going to say this is lazy booking. I don't care. I'm geeking out over seeing what this fight would look like. I want to see Renato Moicano versus Bobby Green. That fight is freaking awesome, and that's the fight to me, AK. What do you want to see next from Moicano? What do you want to see for Bobby Green, my next friend? Because Bobby Green in Houston was treated like a freaking star during that win over Nasrat Haqparast.
Yeah, look, I know we're kind of cheating again. We just did Adesanya versus Cannonier, which is the obvious pick. I think we all had to make that one. I couldn't think of a better option than Bobby Green and Renato Moicano.
It's good.
In my personal rankings, I have Bobby Green 22nd. I have Moicano 23rd. So they're right next to each other. They're both on 2-fight win streaks. They're both veterans. Obviously, Bobby Green a little more experience at 155, but that doesn't really matter. They're both veterans, super exciting in there. Moicano a little bit more of a nose for the finish, but that's not for lack of trying for Bobby Green. I think if anyone looks at Bobby Green's sort of opponents that he's fought, there's a lot of guys in there that are tough to finish. So you don't really blame Bobby Green for not having more knockouts on his resume. He's been in some just amazing striking battles, and if he was facing lower ranked competition, I guarantee he'd be putting a ton of people away. So, look, I can tell you now. I can tell you now ahead of time, the listeners were with us on this one. I think it was maybe the most popular pick I saw. There's maybe a couple others besides, of course, Israel Adesanya and Jared Cannonier. Those are the two most obvious picks. I feel like they're gonna. I feel like this isn't likely to happen though, because there's also a lot of directions you could go with both guys. Again, both veterans, super versatile, super tough. They can go up in the rankings. They can be used again as litmus tests for up and coming guys. The UFC wants to see how good they are. They are really, really good right now, utility guys, and I mean that as a compliment for the UFC matchmakers, because you can put them in there with almost anyone. But in terms of entertainment and as far as what I think they deserve and a fight that would set up either guy for a top 20, top 15 opponent, I would love to see Green and Moicano just matched up just this week. Just say the matchmakers go like they're both once the medical suspensions come out, both guys are healthy. Send them back out there against each other.
There's a lot of picks for both of these guys. A lot of very popular choices. These are probably the two most match-made fighters on the entire card.
A lot of good ones in the comments too, by the way. If you're
a
on
ton
YouTube,
of them, and I'm not pulling them all up just because.
No, we can't pull them all up. But great job.
We're gonna
guys,
talk. Yeah, we're gonna talk about them. There's no doubt about it. So
very good picks.
Let us head to the wild card round. And for those who are joining us for the very first time, the wild card round is we will now select one fighter that we have not match made for yet, and we're gonna do it right now. So it could be someone on the main card who is not victorious that we haven't discussed. Could be a fighter on the prelims who did get a win. Maybe they did not get a win. Who knows? The sky is the limit, AK. There's a lot of names to choose from. Who is your UFC 271 wildcard selection?
Mike, I can tell you my pick would have been Sergey Morozov, a guy that I've been pumping his tires for a while. I'm a big fan of the guy, of his work before the UFC. I think his fights in the UFC have actually been good. He's just again faced super tough competition, and in this case came out great early, but facing a veteran guy who's not shaken by a bad first round. Excellent performance by Douglas Silva de Andrade, who now will be my wild card pick. Morozov would have been, so Andrade wins the Silva de Andrade, wins the illustrious Otno AK Lee wild card pick this week. Bantamweight is just effing ridiculous. Like again, just like I said, Bobby Green, Moicano, Silva de Andrade, a veteran. There's just so many guys that can match him up with. So I'm going veteran versus veteran here. I've been pushing for sort of this weird dream fight with Ryan Hall and Hani Yahya. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Hani has any plans to move up to 145 for that fight. It just would be super cool. And Ryan Hall has fought since I suggested that matchup, so that's kind of clearly off the table now. So there we go. I'm going to Hani Yahya and De Silva. I think that's, again, would just be an awesome clash of styles. I have no idea who would win. Like any Hani Yahya fight probably gets to the ground. He wins, but De Silva very strong down there. So Brazilian versus Brazilian, veteran versus veteran, Hani Yahya and Silva de Andrade.
That is a fun fight. You could throw Ronnie Lawrence in there with Hani Yahya, and I would watch the crap out of that too. No surprise here. I'm sure you knew who I was going to go with. I'm going to go with Casey O'Neill with the full-fledged heel turn in a lot of people's eyes on Saturday. She beats Roxanne Modafferi, calls out the Houston crowd. She wants to take some time off. But there is a fight with some heat on it that is just too damn easy to make right now. Chuck B, I'm with you. You got to do Casey O'Neill versus Joanne Wood. Those two do not like each other. And look, AK, I know what you're thinking. She's already fighting somebody.
Yes.
That's fine. She's fighting
March 26th.
March 26th.
Mm-hmm.
However, I favor Alexa Grasso in that fight right now. But I don't care. Win or lose, I think you have to make that fight next. It's right there for you. You could build it up. They don't like each other. Casey needs time to heal up. That gives time for Joanne to fight, heal up herself. You can take a break, late summer, early fall, boom, book this fight, and it's a good one. I think you do it, and I'm ready for it.
Pass that Scottish torch, start, because Casey O'Neill is from a native of Scotland, right? But she's fighting out of Australia, or the other way around? She's native of Australia, fighting out of Scotland. Which one is it? Native of Scotland.
Who?
Casey O'Neill.
O'Neill?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's all over the place.
Yeah,
she's lived in
But she's born in Scotland. Is that?
Yeah.
Am I not? Okay, born. So she's a native of Scotland, much like
then Australia,
but fights out of Australia. Yeah, she essentially that is her home base now. So, Daniel Edwards says Scottish flag on a pole match. Yes, classic Vince Russo setup. Yeah, no, I like it. I agree. I agree that it doesn't really necessarily matter what happens with the Grasso matchup on you said March 26th, right?
Yeah, it's the Columbus card.
Of course. I don't know where I'd go with it. I think I intentionally did not make a pick. I think she is. I'm not sure how quickly to push her. Again, our listeners were all over the place with this one, so I'm kind of looking forward to reading out what they had to say. And I'm kind of dodging this question myself. I don't know. That does make a lot of sense, though. She's clearly ready, I think, for someone on the top 10, especially again with respect to Joanne Woods, someone who's kind of sliding out of the top 10, and that spot might be right for the taking. So,
yeah,
it's a tough business. It's tough business.
Yeah, I mean, my initial thought was Casey O'Neill versus Cynthia Calvillo because Cynthia's going to need some time as well after that Andrea Lee fight. So give her time to try to get her mind right, get her body right after that tough fight. What is going on here?
Nothing. I hit my laptop. I was so excited about what you were saying, Mike. I was just like, yes, Mike Baker. Yes. Oh, no.
How about Casey O'Neill versus the crazy judge, AK? What a rough hour for
Robert
that dude.
Alexander, as our colleague Aaron Bronstetter correctly pointed out on Twitter, an actual rocket scientist, a man who's an actual rocket scientist. Aaron pulled up his credentials somewhere, I guess from his maybe the Texas Commission website or something like that. So clearly a very bright individual. But I think most people would know you can be a very smart person and not necessarily know what you're seeing in an MMA fight. That has to be the case with Robert Alexander. Which one? It was that one in the Arlovsky-Bandera fight where he was the dissenting score. And I was joking on our work chat that he was one of the breakout names of UFC 271 because I was not familiar with Robert Alexander, but he was so bad that the always affable John Anik, who also keeps it real, we should just say, also keeps it real all the time. He called this man out in the broadcast. You will rarely. I shouldn't say rarely. I do think John Anik is inclined to do that when it happens. He mentioned that Robert Alexander had only judged, I think, 4 UFC fights prior to this event, and you could see that was the case. So we went into UFC 271 worrying about how the Texas judges might go, and boy, one of them really stood out like a sore thumb. So tip of the cap, I guess, a shameful one to Robert Alexander. That was bad.
Really, really bad.
The laptop one. Hyper NF, the laptop one.
Apparently, Calvillo's going to try to go back to 115. I don't like that idea at all. If she could do it super healthy. I mean, we do have the PI. She is in Vegas now, so she could do it just don't rush into it. Take your time if you think you can get down there, but that's a tough cut, man. I've talked to her many times. She hated that cut, and I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Do we have any check the tapes? Do we have any bonus features? Do we have a mic check? Anything like that?
1 second. Let me hydrate here. Sorry, guys. This is live. This is live. Normally we edit out my drinking water. This is live.
This is what people came for.
Normally we edit out my knocking over my laptop. So again, you guys are seeing live. No movie magic today.
So real quick, if you want to take another sip, AK, we'll answer this question. We got Colby versus Masvidal coming up on March 5th. Does Masvidal's power scare at all that he can knock Colby out? Sure. But I mean, I don't know what the betting lines are. I'm sure they're very heavily in the Covington side. I mean, this is outside of a vicious knockout or a one shot or a flying knee or something crazy from Masvidal. This just has a Colby 49-46 decision written all over it, but you never know. It's someone as seasoned as a Masvidal. But go ahead, AK. Back to you.
Oh yes, all right. What was the question? Just can Masvidal knock him out? What is it?
Who do we have in Colby versus Masvidal? Yeah. Does Masvidal power does Masvidal's power scare at all that he can knock Colby out?
Yeah. I mean, the second part of the question for sure. Of course. I think Covington's aware of that. I think he's been in there with guys who at any moment can knock him out, but he's got a great chin and endless cardio and great wrestling. That goes a long way to preventing you from getting caught square on the jaw. I mean, again, I know Usman did it. It took him 24 minutes and like 55 seconds to do it. So very hard to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I want to give a half point to our boy regular contributor Marcus McGahee for the Jessica Penne versus Luana Pinheiro rebooking April 30th. He's one of the people who called for that, and he just reminded me. I'm not giving him a full point. I mean, again, it's a rebooking. What do you want, a cookie? I mean, but thank you, Marcus, as always, and you'll get some more love later in the show, as you always do. I've got a new segment, Mike. Got a new segment to commemorate our second live pay-per-view show. I know I should have run this by you, but do you mind if I break this out?
Yeah, why the hell not?
All right. To quote a famous line from Happy Gilmore, this is my new segment I call "Where were you on that one, dipshit?" Because I think so. I think sometimes not you. This is for the listeners. This is directed at the innocent listeners. Because
God.
sometimes there's fights that happen, and I'm always like, and I go back and check our notes because I want to give out no points, and somehow no one got them. So this is my finger of shame to our legion of listeners who you would think, Mike, you would think the collective brain trust would never miss anything, like especially if it's like a compelling and seemingly obvious pick. But you guys, and don't blame us. Mike and I are only responsible for 2 picks. We can only handle 2 picks per fighter an episode. You guys are literally like 9,100 people out there. 9,100, 900,000. I don't know how numbers work. I'm not Robert Alexander. Okay. So there's 2 picks that I wish you guys should have been able to sniff out. And if you did, please feel free to correct me through DMs or what have you. Brian Kelleher versus Umar Nurmagomedov, UFC 272, March 5th. You guys have sent hundreds of Kelleher picks. None of you picked Umar Nurmagomedov. Nice one. And then Angela Hill versus Virna Jandiroba, May 14th. Again, I could be wrong. Maybe because she lost in the last card, her last fight. I didn't write down Angela Hill picks. So if I'm mistaken on this one, but this seems like something that, again, should have already happened or you guys should have picked. So, and that's going down May 14th. Mike, our listeners are brilliant, but sometimes they make mistakes. So that was the first edition of Where Were You on That One, dipshit? And hopefully the last. Hopefully I never have to say this again.
All right. We will we'll go to the listener picks, but I want to throw this question out because I don't know if we really discussed this that much. Michael Bisping made his pay-per-view debut, replacing Joe Rogan, who, by the way, Wednesday afternoon was scheduled to be on the broadcast, and he was not on the broadcast. So let me just say that one more time for you. So the question here from Stone Zebra 666 is, was the backlash to Bisping's commentary warranted in your opinions? People were very mad at him on the Bird app. What do you think, AK?
Well, what was the criticism exactly? That just was he not reading the action right? Was he kind of Roganing it a little bit? I don't know. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention. I will say it was not my favorite commentary performance from the team as a whole. I'm very excited for Bisping to get his shot. I did think it was just a little flat. I felt like the Cormier Bisping dynamic wasn't particularly strong. I think neither guy. It helps when, for one thing, 3-person teams are never great. I know the UFC's committed to it. They're not going anywhere, so there's no point like just completely shooting that down. But you like people to be able to slot into roles. John Anik has his obvious role, and even when it's Rogan and Cormier, again, a combination I don't like. I understand why there's so many fans of that team. Rogan is, again, the veteran color commentator. He has his catchphrases that people are used to, and he kind of brings this frat boy out of Cormier, which again annoys me, but which I know many, many, many viewers enjoy. So there's a dynamic there. Bisping and Cormier, I don't know if they knew what to do. I don't know if they knew which guy should sort of be like a straight man, which guy should be funny. They didn't want to step on each other's toes. They were kind of almost too respectful of each other. So, and I did see people criticizing, I think, again, Bisping saying maybe he was too biased towards Adesanya in the main event, not calling out enough of Rob Whittaker stuff. And that might have been the case with other fights. So criticism certainly warranted, as much as you should, as anyone who's doing something like that in the public should be criticized. But I didn't think he did like a particularly terrible job. It's not like, oh, I never want to see Bisping do a pay-per-view again. It wasn't a memorable performance, and I don't think it was his best night. But it wasn't just him. I didn't think Cormier was great either.
Props to Liam Mahoney for getting that correct. I forgot about UFC 251.
Oh, thank you.
He tagged in. Paul Felder was supposed to be on, and then he tested positive for COVID and was supposed to call it. So Bisping tagged in, just kind of like this one, short notice, tagged in, and there we go. Yeah, it was. I thought early on it was kind of tough. But I get it. It's tough doing those broadcasts, especially in Bisping's position where he probably wasn't at any of the fighter meetings. He's doing this research on his own. So Anik and DC have such a big leg up on him, and he shows up, does the commentary just kind of out of the blue, and it was what it was. I thought early on you just have two A personalities along with John Anik. It's tough. I think eventually things got a little bit better. Not great. I just wasn't a fan of the tandem. I think Bisping and Paul Felder work so much better together because Bisping's more of that, A-level personality, more of the leadership role, if you will. And Felder is so good at filling in the gaps. I feel like Dominic Cruz, in a lot of ways, is really good at filling the gaps. I know a lot of people don't love Cruz on commentary, but I feel like Cruz and Felder are like the perfect kind of third seat. And then DC, Rogan, whatever, Bisping, those A-level personalities, it's kind of hard when you have all those guys just kind of talking over each other and stuff like that. So I didn't think he did a hard job. I give Bisping a lot of props for having the testicular fortitude, if you will, to just say yes and jump in on a day's notice without knowing half of these fighters and just compiling all this research to do the best he could. So I give him a lot of credit. That is not an easy job to do, especially when you're doing it on a day's notice. That's pretty freaking crazy. So good on him. But overall, yes, that was not the best. Yeah. I would have liked to see Michael Chiesa get a shot, if we're being honest. I think he'd be really good in that role.
And as we said, of course, Laura Sanko, she's primed. She's ready to go. Trust me, if they called her 10 minutes before the show and said, oh, someone's car broke down and they didn't make it to the end, could you hop in on 10 minutes? Laura Sanko has is ready. She has been ready. She's going to jump on that opportunity. I think we agree. She's definitely going to get a fight night opportunity sometime this year. But pay-per-view should not be out of the question. She's done a lot 100%. Of commentary work for Contender Series and Invicta. She's just excellent. She does her research. She has fought before. So people really, really like her. It's just such an obvious choice. So hopefully sooner rather than later, we do see Laura Sanko get a pay-per-view opportunity. One specific criticism I did see, Mike, the commentary team, which I agree with. I see it a bit in the comments here, and I saw it on Twitter. Maybe less judging talk from Cormier and Bisping. Bisping, I will say, of some of the fighters, commentators, has been trying really hard to sort of educate himself on judging. If you see like his commentary from like a year ago to now, you can see him like either at least second guessing himself. He doesn't speak in absolutes. He'll be like, oh, I'm pretty sure like in the unified rules, this is how this is. And this is, he is definitely studying it. And when you're calling fights live, look, you're not going to remember every aspect of the unified rules. Okay. So you really can't blame him if sometimes he says, oh, I think that this won this fight. And then Cormier is like not even close. Cormier, I think, has zero understanding of the unified rules. I'm sorry. I get it. I know people like him. We like him. We like his personality. But anytime Cormier talks, I will say, if you're listening to Cormier talk about judging and scoring, take everything with a grain of salt. He is not up to date on the unified rules, like the current scoring system. And the problem is when him and Bisping were going back and forth on it on Saturday, it may as well have just been dead air. And I think that's another thing people didn't like. And then when I say out, that's like, I think anytime they were discussing judging, scoring, I was just like, this is not a conversation that's helping this fight. Focus on what they're good at, technique, and what does a fighter feel when they're in there telling their stories. If they had more time to do the research in Bisping's case. So, a lot of criticisms to be made. But again, it wasn't like the worst thing ever. And I'm sure they'll be better eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I wish the judging wasn't so terrible because then we would have avoided it altogether probably. But although we heard a lot of it in the main event, it was pretty wild. So do we have anything else, or are we going right to the peeps?
I think we can go right to the peeps. But again, a lot of comments come, guys. Amazing. By the way, keep the comments coming in. We love how active you guys are. I see a lot of debate over the Adesanya Whittaker fight, and that's great. But yes, Mike, we can move on to the listeners.
Okay, why don't you disclaim them while I try not to giggle at that comment.
All right. Marcus McGahee, by the way, dubbed this the Happy Trails to the Happy Warrior edition. Of course, guys, we'll have some more Roxanne Modafferi talk. We had a lot of Roxanne Modafferi talk during the week. Talked about her a ton on the post-fight show, and we're going to talk about her a little bit more today because, again, this might be the last time we really, really get to talk about Roxanne, at least as an active fighter, as she was on Saturday for the final time. So, Happy Trails to the Happy Warrior edition. Thank you, Marcus, for that title, guys. We like to emphasize mostly talking about winners, unless they're in the main event or title fight. Then, of course, we'll talk a lot about Robert Whittaker and Derrick Lewis in this case. Categories rule, guys. If you are somehow the only person to pick a fight, at least in my picks, I'm going to give you a full odd no point, which as of today, I think was equivalent to 13,000 Ethereum and 40,000 Bitcoin. So it's crazy. It just keeps going up. But, there's a lot of fluctuation. That's something. Don't bet your life on it. Guys, please pay attention that you have the right weight class. Did the people fight already recently? Does someone have a notable injury that's going to keep them out for a long time? Is people not in the UFC anymore that you're trying to matchmake for? Or they could already be booked and you seem to not know that. So please avoid sending those in. I just ignore them. Most importantly, golden rule. Your pick could just be doo-doo. And if that's the case, we're just going to skip over it. And my additional rule for this week, people, I don't know how long this guy's going to be in the UFC. That debut certainly was lacking, but it's Blood Diamond. Okay, it is Blood Diamond. I know it's a cool name, and people were maybe disappointed that Blood Diamond did not live up to it, but he's not Mike Mathetha. He's not Mike Diamond. It's Blood Diamond. And as long as he's in the UFC, we will continue to use that name.
All right. Let's go to the peeps. I'll try not to repeat.
And try not to say Mike Mathetha or whatever the hell that nonsense is, Mike. I know you go through your picks pretty quick sometimes. Blood Diamond. Please self-edit Blood Diamond.
I will. Oh, dude. Don't worry about it. Matt Ravelli, freaking great night of fights. I want Renato Moicano versus the winner of Drew Dober versus Ricky Glenn. I think that fight would be a blast. Then the obvious choice, I feel like Bobby Green versus Brad Riddell would be insane. I feel like that's a very popular pick.
Oh, yeah.
Robbie Ryan, good day, Mike and AK. O'Neal versus the Jojo Grasso winner. Bobby Green versus Diego Ferreira. That's a popular one. Moicano versus the winner of Sarukian, Joel Alvarez. Man, that's a tough ask. Brunson versus Hermanson. Lewis versus the Rosenstrike Tybura winner. Tuivasa versus Stipe or Gane, whoever doesn't fight Jones. Whittaker. I'm not sure what his contract situation is, but it's a real uphill battle to get a third fight unless you're Max Holloway. Retirement could be an option. If he's not motivated to keep going, a new start, another promotion could give him some fire in his belly, or if he continues in the UFC, Sean Strickland is the fight to make. We'll see.
In between the first and second round, that did look like a man who was second guessing things.
100%.
Yeah, we all thought like, wow, that doesn't look good.
Yeah,
but he worked it out.
He sure did. Magic Mighty 67 on IG. Hi, Mike. Hope all is well. Few suggestions this week: Green versus Riddell, Moicano versus Gamrot. Don't think that fight can happen because they're both ATT guys. So, I mean, maybe it could because it's a massive team.
Yeah, it's really big. Yeah.
Casey O'Neill versus Jennifer Maia. I think that's a little too soon. At least you don't need to rush Casey O'Neill. And then Phillips versus the winner of Jack Shore versus Timur Valiev. Holy moly, that's fun. Both of those options are great.
Man, I didn't see that one. I didn't get one of those.
That's a good one.
I like it. Yeah, it's good.
Jack Porter, Tuivasa versus Stipe, because we know John Jones is never going to fight again. Is that Jed Meshew?
That's a reasonable. Listen, until we see John Jones booked again, that's a perfectly reasonable take.
Yes. Lewis versus Tom Aspinall, win or lose. Brunson versus Rockhold in his final fight.
Oh, sure. I always forget to factor in Rockhold in the match. I don't think I've thrown Rockhold into a pick. I think forever. I don't know. I almost have no confidence in him coming back anytime soon.
I think the UFC. He's teasing. Luke Rockhold apparently is teasing a fight with Paulo Costa in June, at least on Instagram, saying it's wine night in June. Who the hell knows? But I kind of want to see Rockhold. I kind of want to see them rebook the Rockhold Strickland fight because I think that's a good spot for Strickland. It's a good spot for Rockhold. It's a big fight. People will care. Sure. Moicano versus the loser of Sarukian Alvarez. Kyler Phillips versus Ricky Simone. Holy moly.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one. Jack Porter suggests Robert Whittaker versus Kamaru Usman, AK.
Usman come up to 185.
And fight Whittaker.
Yeah. This kind of goes with what we were discussing on the post-fight show a bit. How remember we were saying like, man, we wish they did that thing when, dominant champions wanted to fight up a weight class instead of just throwing them immediately into a title shot. Give them a another like maybe a name at light heavyweight. Now Whittaker is more than a name at middleweight. Excuse me. Like we said, he is the second, clearly the second best middleweight in the world. So this wouldn't be like an Anderson Silva situation where he went up to beat Forrest Griffin, who was a UFC champion, but it's I think was still people. I remember the time. Anderson Silva was still favored in that fight. And then, before Forrest Griffin, he fought James Irvin at light heavyweight. So that was definitely we're giving you a fun fight at 205. So they don't really do that. This would kind of be in between. It would be both a fun fight and also one that would, set him up to fight for the title if Adesanya himself were to leave. Because I do think, as Usman has said, unless they both get paid like $10 million each, they really don't want to fight each other. But yeah, fun idea.
Poppy _ Bryant, wildcard pick Kyler Phillips versus Victor Henry 2. Sure, I'm in for that. Renato Moicano versus Magomed Mustafayev. That post-fight interview had me so hyped. And he suggests Tai Tuivasa versus the winner of Curtis Blades versus Chris Daukaus. Yeah. Sorry, but I'm thinking realistic. Yep. And unless there's some crazy interim title again, I don't see Tai getting gone, John, Francis, or Stipe. I disagree with you, but we'll see what happens. John Ray, Lawrence versus Hakramanov, Ulberg versus William. I don't mind that one. Yeah, but I don't love it either.
That could be the worst fight ever.
Yeah, I don't love it. No.
That could be the worst fight ever.
I'm going with my initial gut instinct that I hate that idea. I mean, I love that you're submitting picks, but I mean, on paper it makes sense, but that's just a horrible fight.
Thank you, John Ray.
Kyler Phillips versus Said Nurmagomedov. That's fun.
Yeah,
O'Neal versus Calvillo. Arlovsky versus Oleinik. Win or lose. Tuivasa versus the Rosenstrike Tybura winner. Whittaker versus Vittori. Cool.
Yeah, it could be really bad. It could be like super nightmare. Bad. Yeah, please no.
He wants it. Marcus, we know what Marcus does. Let me go through these and try not to repeat anything. Derrick
the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I got the spreadsheet. Derrick Lewis versus the winner of Spivak versus Hardy. Arlovsky versus Juan Espino, sure. Ronnie Lawrence versus Fernie Garcia.
Who's that?
It must be a contender series.
Series? I'll look it up.
Carlos Ulberg versus Jailton Almeida. Come on, Marcus. What are you doing? Are you trying to get this man killed? Why would you book this fight?
Marcus, you wasted a spreadsheet on this? What are you doing?
That's a bad pick. I'm sorry. That's just bad. I mean, experience. No. Did you see Jailton Almeida's last fight? Are you crazy? Good Lord. We need to build Carlos Ulberg up with guys who are like 4-0, 3-2. We need to do Bellator booking for Carlos Ulberg. Jailton Almeida? Good Lord. Jailton Almeida could fight top 15 guys and win. This is insane.
He should not be fighting in the UFC, Carlos Ulberg, if we're being honest. He'd probably not be fighting in the UFC. Fernie Garcia is a contender series, most recent season. Yeah.
Jacob Malkoun versus Dusko Todorovic. Interesting. Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Miles Johns. Love it. Jeremiah Wells versus Jack Della Maddalena. Wow. I like that fight.
That's good.
You're redeeming yourself.
That's really good.
And then Maxime Grishin versus Marcin Prachnio. Main event.
Oh, sorry, Maxime Grishin, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, I was distracted by a comment. Vendetta Shin in the comments says, give Ulberg Alex Pereira. People stop it. Stop it.
Alex Pereira is about to fight Bruno Silva for the love of Pete. How about this?
Ulberg versus Alvi. There we go. Now we're thinking.
I don't mind that idea. Like,
if we're gonna book a horrible fight, that's the kind of horrible fight I want.
Yes. Let's be a little more sensitive, shall we? Owen Carroll, Maxim Grishin versus Daun Jung, Jeremiah Wells versus Alex Morono. He did call for that fight. Douglas Silva de Andrade versus John Castaneda. Wow, that's super fun. Jacob Malkoun versus Marc-Andre Barriol. Ronnie Lawrence versus Tony Kelly. Whoa, that's fun. This is Carlos Ulberg matchmaking the way it should be.
Oh,
Carlos Ulberg versus Alexa Kamer.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, that's the right one. That's the one I saw. That's a sweet spot. That's the sweet spot.
Kyler Phillips versus Frankie Edgar, AK.
Hold on. First of all, nope. Sorry, Mike. My sound went out there for a second. I thought you said Kyler Phillips, and then I just heard a scrambled noise and a faint buzzing. Listen, I don't want to. I do want to read my dear friend. I think it was Stephen Breiter, who suggested that Hayes Bethard, who suggests that in a much more diplomatic way that didn't break my heart. He said, "Oh gosh, how did he write this down?" Sorry, Mike, go on. I'll go on. I'll get back to it.
Okay, Kyler Phillips versus Frankie Edgar. Casey O'Neill versus the Macy Barber Montana De La Rosa, I assume winner. Andrei Arlovsky versus Alexander Romanov. That's probably the fight that they're going to end up making. I've been saying that's the fight they should have made 500 times now. So we'll see what happens. Bobby Green versus Diego Ferreira. That's fun. Although I think Bobby Green's ahead of him at this point, but still fun. I'd watch Bobby Green fight anybody. Turd Ferguson. I will say I left a lot of these out. Andrei Arlovsky versus the winner of Shamil Abdurrahimov, Sergey Pavlovich. Ronnie Lawrence versus Miles Johns. That's fun. Jacob Malkoun versus Brian Battle. That's fun. Jeremiah Wells versus Court McGee. Yeesh. And Maxim Grishin versus the winner of Oleksiejczuk Jacoby, although Jacoby already beat Grishin and Grishin missed weight for that fight. So maybe if Oleksiejczuk wins.
Right.
I don't really love that one, but I appreciate you sticking in. Drew Hilty. Izzy is far and away the best middleweight in the world, and the drop from Whittaker to the next guy is massive. Cannonier will basically fill the role of mandatory challenger. And then he suggests Whittaker versus Paulo Costa or Vittori. Don't really know where he goes from here. Dylan, hey, Mike, hell of a card. Here's my picks. Adesanya versus Usman once Usman heals up. And,
Again,
and you
really
know,
want to.
but you
They'll do it
know
for the right
when,
price.
hold on, there's a hear me out. And you know when there's a hear me out that we're going to say something. They've listened to the show many times. I know they're both friends, but at this point, they're seeking legacy. Cannonier is a great option, but legitimately, I think Usman is the only one out there who could beat Izzy at 185. Well, aside from Hamzat. It's just not going to happen, guys. It's not going to happen. It's going to be one of those, what if this ever happened kind of fights. It's just never going to happen. They're too close. The money's just not going to be there. It's just not going to happen. It's not. Sorry.
And again, you have a challenger in Cannonier ready. I think we have people coming up at welterweight. Again, Hamzat Chimaev is someone who's been mentioned. So, Mike, you don't like this one. Ulberg versus Chidi and Njokuani. I'm pretty sure Chidi and Njokuani would F him up right now.
Come on. Come on. I mean, come on. We can't do that.
Listen, people, I know we love talking about Carlos Ulberg. He's got the cool city kickboxing connection. He's pals with Izzy. And all right, let's just say it. We're live. It's a Sunday afternoon, Sunday, whatever, before noon. He's not bad to look at. He's not bad to look at. All right. There's if you're the UFC, you want to put this guy on posters. I understand. All right. That's fine. He makes all of us men watching feel inadequate about ourselves. I get it. But let's bring him along as slowly as we can. Let's be reasonable with some of these matchups. Again, we don't know. Ulberg could be out of the UFC in 2 fights. We don't know. Or he might show these great leaps and bounds and improvements, and we could be talking about him on to the next one a year from now. That's my hope for him. But people, come on. Chidi and Njokuani, stop trolling.
Whittaker versus Brunson, too. Brandon Nunez. Whittaker versus Strickland. Moicano versus Dawson. Although Grant Dawson, from what I understand, just moved to ATT. He's leaving Glory MMA, at least for now, and is moving to Coconut Creek, Florida, and is going to be at ATT. So they'll be training together.
That's right.
How about that? And then Bobby Green versus Tony Ferguson, which is actually a pretty popular pick. We've got a bunch of those, and I saw a bunch of those in the comments as well. Max Sherman, Arlovsky versus the loser of Dawkins Blades, Phillips versus Edgar Sari, AK, Casey versus the winner of Grasso Wood, Grisham versus Devin Clark. Oh, my Lord. Blood Diamond versus Andre Fiallo. Come on.
What?
You're gonna throw him in there with Fiallo? Come on.
Did this person at least write Blood Diamond and not his?
Yes, he did.
They at least wrote. Thank you. All right.
Jeez. Come on.
By the way, Mike, I want to address a comment. I shouldn't even mention this, but Matthew Richardson in the comments talking about the main event of 271. Imagine getting 4 takedowns and better significant strike accuracy and not winning. Matthew, congratulations. You picked the two of the worst criteria for judging a fight. Takedowns that don't lead to offense are meaningless, and significant strike accuracy means literally nothing. If someone lands, 25 out of 30, 35 strikes, then the other person lands like 75 out of 200. Guess what? The guy who landed 75 strikes probably won. So well done. Terrible view of the judging criteria. I'm sorry. I got to call that out. It's horrible.
Yeah. I mean, Sean Sheehan from Severe MMA does a great job explaining
Watch his videos.
The criteria. He does a great job.
Watch Sean Sheehan's videos on YouTube about judging. You don't have to agree with everything he says, but he presents pretty clearly the criteria that the judges and you guys should be following. And now Matt says he's trolling. Damn it, Matthew, you got me.
Damn it. Funky bit. I can't wait till Kyler Phillips gets ranked so him and Sugar Show get scrapped. That would be sweet. It would be sweet. And you can go to the MMA lab probably once or twice a week and watch that.
Guys, they're pals.
Because they do train together. Yeah.
Unless it's for a title fight, I just don't think they're gonna. They don't even want to talk about it.
Even this, I don't like. Come on.
All right, Mike, we got to put a board.
We gotta go.
Diamond and Carlos Ulberg picks. Just put a pause. They're hilarious and we love them. But this is what happens when we go live.
We got another Ulberg pick coming up. Gerard Biagin, Lewis, long rest, then Rosenstrike, win or lose. Okay, that's not bad. Ulberg versus Shamil Gamzatov, and Kyler Phillips versus Douglas Silva de Andrade. Daniel Markoulis, Wells versus Matthews, just rebook it. And saying, after seeing a photo of Blood Diamond next to Dan Hooker, I think you might want to consider a drop to lightweight. Not that the competition gets any easier, but he seems a bit undersized for welterweight.
Sure. If he's comfortable. Yes, there we go. That's the Blood Diamond level. Thank you.
Yes, Mike Jackson is actually booked to fight Dean Barry.
Oh, that's right.
For like, I think this is like the 4th or 5th time.
I was saying, that fight's a little
This is
cursed.
the Alex Perez match now of the lightweight division.
That fight's a little cursed.
Or the welterweight division, I think this one is. He likes De Silva versus Yaya as well.
Great.
Ulberg versus Menafield. Come on. However, I'd love to see Carlos and Jimmy Crew go at it. Come on. What are we doing here?
Carlos Ulberg?
You all want to see Carlos Ulberg just
weird
take a bunch of L's. Come on.
He looks like a star. He looks like a star. I get it.
I'm sorry. Fabio Charant, that fight was there for Fabio Charant. That fight was there for Carlos Ulberg's style, and he just didn't do anything.
Bad.
Come on. No, you can't do that. Ulberg versus Jordan Wright, no. Kyler Phillips versus the winner of Yadong Marias or Saeed Nurmagomedov. No Frankie Edgar for the sake of AK's heart. So someone who actually appreciates you, AK. O'Neal versus the winner of Fioro versus Jessica. I really want to see Fioro O'Neal, frankly. I think we will see that fight at some point. I don't think we'll see that right now. I think the UFC will be very careful with those two. And then he says, please give me Bobby Green versus Gregor Gillespie. Wow.
Clash of styles. I like it. I dig it.
Super fun.
Yeah.
Tai Tuivasa versus the winner of Aspinall Volkov. I truly think with the emergence of swift big guys like Tom and Cyril and the insane marketable persona of Tuivasa, the UFC has more to work with at heavyweight.
True. I agree. Who was hating on it on the show? Oh, Jed Meshew was like, oh, heavyweights or whatever. I'm like, no,
it is fun.
Relatively speaking to how it's been in recent years, heavyweight has had a slight resurgence as far as fresh contenders go. Come on,
it's fun. Yeah, it is fun.
I think so.
And he says, plus, I don't see a world right now where the UFC will put Tai in a ring with a wrestler like Blades. Yeah, you got to be careful with the booking. Ride this train till the wheels fall off, like I said. Francesco, our fan from Italy, Tuivasa versus Miocic for the interim title. He's not buying John Jones. O'Neal versus Jillian Robertson. Interesting.
I mean, almost too slow, though. I feel like O'Neal has maybe leap. And I really like Jillian Robertson. I think O'Neal might have kind of jumped over her past that matchup.
That'd be the kind of matchup where she's just like, I want to fight. Okay, Jillian Robertson's here if you want to fight in a couple weeks. Okay. And then Jeremiah Wells versus Nicholas Dalby. That's fun too.
We just want to see Nicholas Dalby again. We just don't know what the status is of him. Could be a visa thing. We don't know. But yeah, we just haven't seen Nicholas Dalby for a while. He's such a good matchup for so many guys at 170.
Casey Ryan, do Strickland versus Rob, and if Strickland can beat Rob, then give him the title shot.
Yeah.
If you want to be lazy, you can match up Green versus Moicano because they're on similar trajectories. But I think Green deserves a top 15 opponent. Moicano does too. So I'm going with Riddell. That is a guaranteed banger, much like Green versus Fiziev was. Make it a fight of the night headliner or pay-per-view co-main, even a prelim headliner, and that one delivers. Listen, there have been worse main events on UFC cards over the last year than Bobby Green versus Renato Moicano. So if you want to headline a random card at the Apex with those two guys, you will never get a complaint out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see 5 rounds of that. And he goes, and before I go, Izzy 4 rounds to 1. People have got to stop scoring empty takedowns so high. Izzy controlled every round. He did more damage, had the octagon control, and landed more strikes. If Rod had fought every round like he did the 5th, he would have won the fight. Yeah, hard to argue that. I gave Whittaker 4 and 5. I thought the judges were going to be screwy, which would have been just wild. We'd be talking about a lot of different things. And then Tristan Gordat had a lot of the similar picks, but he also suggested Jacob Malkoun versus Andre Petrosky, which would be a fun fight.
Sure.
AK, go for it, my friend.
I want to shout out Brian G _216 first. Live comments. He says, hear me out. Bobby Green would need another win, but why not Green versus Conor McGregor when he comes back? Bobby got a bigger pop at UFC 271 than everyone besides Lewis, which sells fights and a fight that Conor can win. Again, on paper, I think that's an amazing pick. I wish we lived in a world where Conor McGregor was obviously, one, not injured, and 2, just a more active fighter. Where he did have the compulsion and he was compensated well enough to fight 3 times a year. I think again he's strategic. He knows how much he makes per fight. He doesn't need to fight 3 times per year. But I wish they paid him even more so he would step into the cage as much time as they need him. Because I think a fight with Conor and Bobby Green would be so much fun. I think the buildup would be fun. The in-cage antics would just be amazing. Bobby Green deserves a big fight like that. So Brian G, I like the suggestion. Again, this is pretty much not 0, but I'd say 2% chance that happens. But I would, again, Magic Wand pick. That's right up there for me. I would love that. All right, let me go to Twitter here. We've got a few first timers, guys. So guys, thank you. Your first time will be on one of our live shows. Cal at Caesar _Khaled, I guess Caesar Khaled on Twitter. He said, what do you have to say here? I had a bunch of picks that others had made. Moicano versus the Dober Glenn winner, March 12th, Drew Dober and Ricky Glenn, and Robert Whittaker. So this is interesting. He wants to see, I should say, I don't know. This is Whittaker versus the Covington Masvidal winner at welterweight. Of course, Whittaker used to be a welterweight. He has spoken about how much he hated those weight cuts and did not feel he was his best at that weight class, but he has fought at 170 before. So here's what Cal had to say about that. This is my big hot take for the night. Really don't think there's much for Whittaker at middleweight, and I think he can make the welterweight limit. Don't think he can get Usman right away, but this makes a lot of sense. I take him against either of these guys. Covington would be really tough. Especially if the weight cut had a deleterious effect on Whittaker's performance. So I like the thinking. I do think it's cool, and Whittaker clearly is not as big as some of the guys at middleweight. Especially Adesanya, who's just has such a range and height advantage over him. But sometimes you just have the frame that it's hard to make 170. That 15-pound difference in weight classes sucks, and I do wish there were more weight classes so we could see fights like that. That is not the case. But I like the thinking, Cal. So thank you for sending that in. They said they're a big fan and been waiting a long time to send in some picks. So thank you very much. Rudy Gaywood on Twitter, also a first timer. They said hopefully their picks are not doo-doo. I'll read a couple of these, which I liked. Silva de Andrade versus Cody Stamann. Yeah, that might be. I mean, that's a do or die fight for Stamann. I don't mind it. Ronnie Lawrence versus Miles Johns. Bobby Green versus Gamrot. You kind of shot. Oh, no. You said Moicano versus Gamrot. Probably wouldn't happen. Bobby Green versus Gamrot.
That could happen.
There we go. And then Moicano versus Riddell. And our last first timer, Clearest Values. They sent me a message before for another show. I think it was just a little late, so I didn't have a chance to read it. So thank you, Clearest Values on Twitter, who came in with a few good ones. I'll go with, they mentioned also the O'Neal Robertson pick. And Arlovsky versus Walt Harris. Mike, what were your thoughts? I brought that up in the post-fight show. What were your thoughts on that one again?
Arlovsky, Walt Harris?
Yeah.
I mean, they fought before, so it's kind of tricky. And we saw how it went.
It was a while ago. It was like, I think 2015 or something, right?
But I like
it sucked. But
yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's fine. There are worse matchups that have been suggested for both guys, so I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Chris at Dragon Slayer 2 is with me on Silva de Andrade versus Hanayaya. At Ayo, it's Dad, a regular contributor, had a very nice message for us. I really should just write these down instead of him. My favorite, excuse me. One of the things I look forward to most during fight cards these days is hearing what may come next with you guys the following day. That includes you, Mike. That's me and you. So thank you, Ayo, it's Dad. And we love, again, it's one of Mike. I always tell you it's one of my favorite parts of the show. So my favorite parts of the week, excuse me. One of my favorite parts of working at MMA Fighting is just doing this show. So I love it. Bobby Green versus Gillespie, Carla Phillips, Ricky Simone. How do you like this? Mike? Carlos Ulberg versus Ed Herman. Ed Herman would beat his ass. I'm sorry. I listen. I know Ed Herman is probably smaller than him. I know he's much older. I know he's got a lot of mileage. He's so much more experienced in MMA. I mean, he'd probably I know he's become a bit of a brawler at light heavyweight. He'd probably just take him down. I don't know how. It's been a while since we've seen like prime jiu-jitsu Ed Herman, but it's definitely still there. He just hasn't had to use it or hasn't been able to use it at light heavyweight. But I think he would be able to.
No, you gotta bring guys in to fight Carlos Ulberg. Yeah. Or what we do is we haven't seen a guy get a UFC contract on the Contender Series and then just get demoted to one of those developmental deals. I kind of wish they would do that with Ulberg and give him a developmental deal and just let him fight whenever he wants, wherever he wants, as long as the UFC approves it, and just let him get some seasoning. You could probably do the same with Blood Diamond and just fight guys at his skill level and build up confidence, and they don't get thrown in there with murderers. I mean, again, Carlos Ulberg was matched up with Fabio Charant for a reason, and that was a really bad fight,
Yeah, and it shouldn't have even been seen on ESPN Plus. I mean, I just think that's bad for business when people see a fight like that. I think I don't want to say it's bad for Ulberg's confidence because, again, you're going to have ugly fights early in your career. This was only his 4th pro bout, so that's fine. But this would have been nicer if it happened on a smaller show. The UFC has so many unofficial sort of like feeder leagues. I do wish they would start taking more advantage of those relationships, especially with stuff that's, maybe bolster the UFC Fight Pass program. I don't know. Can you set again? Can you do sort of, you keep paying them on a whatever their UFC contract is. So maybe not a great investment for the UFC in that sense, but good for the fighters and good for their development. So you could put like, why can't he be on an LFA card or Eagle FC? Habib has said he wants Eagle FC to Francis Marshall. No. By the way, I think any of the bantamweights in this card would have beaten the crap out of either Carlos Ulberg or Fabio Charant. But yeah, Eagle FC. Could you have a relationship there? Could you send a Carlos Ulberg to fight for them? I don't know. I don't know if these are options, but we'd always like to see the UFC be more flexible. And I just think it'd be cool if they actually use those quote unquote unofficial feeder leagues as actual feeder leagues. So,
right.
Hayes the third. Some good picks here. O'Neal versus Andrea Lee, Viviane Araújo. Loser. You could probably even give her the. I like loser. I like loser. Again, I'm kind of bringing her along slow. So that fight's going on May 14th. And yes, it was Hayes who wanted to spare my feelings with this Kyler Phillips pick versus someone you mentioned earlier, Mike. This is how they explained it. I just want to say I'm sorry. I think you know what my answer, or the answer is, I should say, for this Phillips matchup. The fight doesn't have to happen. It could just be booked and canceled, like you've suggested before. So yes, for anyone who's just tuning in for the first time, I'm a huge Frankie Edgar fan, and I don't want him to retire, but I also don't want him to ever fight again. So, when people send in Edgar fights, it's always like, yeah, I hope it gets made, but I also hope it gets, and then for some reason it just doesn't happen, and we just do this for the next 10 years until he quietly retires, and we never speak about sort of some of the vicious knockouts he suffered at the end of his career. So thank you, Hayes, for sparing my feelings. I had to deal with this. And Silva de Andrade versus the Montel Jackson Batgary winner, March 26th. I like it. Sorry, I should have read off some of the consensus picks first as well. Moicano versus Dawson, very popular. Adesanya versus Cannonier, Whittaker versus Vittori. Tuivasa versus the Blades, Chris Dawkins winner. And one of my contributors, Dax, at Pike Putt on Twitter. Mike, what do you think about the winner of that fight if this cluster at the top doesn't get resolved? Tuivasa versus Blades or Dawkins for an interim belt.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Jeez.
Can you imagine Tuivasa versus Chris Dawkins for the interim heavyweight title? Not that I think he's going to beat Blades, but if he did, I mean.
Not into it. I mean, that just went of all the possibilities, I feel like that would be the worst. When you have the names that you have up there, it just would not be great. No disrespect to those guys because they're right there. But yeah, I like Tai Tuivasa versus Curtis Blades does not appeal to me at all. Not in any way. Dawkins would be interesting, but I mean, you definitely can't do that for an interim title. Like you just, again, I believe you have to just run Tuivasa till the wheels fall off. You got something here. You don't know how long it's going to last. Push him to the moon and give him all the opportunities. Because if that guy becomes a world champion, if he becomes the UFC heavyweight champion, he's a star, and you could do a lot with that guy. So you got to make the run now. You have to.
Hey, listen, Tai Tuivasa, you're not looking at the MMA math here, Mike. Derrick Lewis beat Curtis Blades, and Tai Tuivasa just beat Derrick Lewis. Hence, Tai Tuivasa would clearly beat Curtis Blades. So I don't know why you don't want to see that matchup. I think it's more compelling than you're suggesting. I'm fine with seeing it, and I would not count out Tai Tuivasa's chances. MMA math, it never fails. Tuivasa versus Gane. Yeah, I mean, look, I'll go back to Hayes third here for a second. He kind of lays it out. He just says the title picture at heavyweight is a bit weird right now. With France out for a bit, the cloud of Jones looming. I'd like for them to do Jones versus Stipe for interim title, and Tai or Gane could get the next title fight after that. However, if you ask me what I think will happen, I strongly suspect Tai's next fight will be for a belt of some sort, as Francis very well could leave the UFC. Jones could be asking for more money than Dana wants to give, or could get himself into trouble again. Yes. I still remember you saying I would get a point if he fought for a belt next. Oh, okay, I shouldn't have to read that part. All right, Hayes, you stop point glomming, okay? Arlovsky versus Romanov and Arlovsky versus Sakai rematch were both the most popular picks I saw for him. O'Neal versus Calvillo, you mentioned that a bunch of times. People are really into that. I saw O'Neal versus Tyler Santos, Mike. This came from Sam Hancock and Dustin Gedko. And Dustin Gedko, I know a lot of people don't want this because it looks like they're both kind of trending upwards. Dustin Gecko says, time to humble this big mouth chick. Oh my goodness. Let's see if she is a striker still. And Blanchfield would torch her as well. Wow.
Wow. Some
Dustin Gedko
bold
going in.
proclamations there. Some
Going
bold
in.
proclamations. Kate, so because you don't like Casey O'Neill, you feel the UFC should just throw in there with Tyler Santos, who, by the way, could very well be fighting for the title in her next fight against Valentina Shevchenko. There's a very strong possibility that's the direction the UFC goes, maybe in a co-main event or in a 3 title fight card, throwing Shevchenko in there to fight Tyler Santos because there's nobody else there. Tyler's like, no, you know what? I'm going to forego the title shot and I'm going to fight Casey O'Neill because I got to humble this big mouth. Listen, I think Casey O'Neill is doing the right thing right now. Beating Roxy in the final fight and whatnot, like, yeah, it stinks. It was a bad position for her to be in, but she played it off perfectly. And by the time, if she keeps winning and she gets to Valentina and she keeps this heel persona and you guys feel the same way you feel about her and you give her that Alex Hernandez treatment, it's a big fight. It's a big fight, and you will watch for the exact same reason that you want her to fight Tyler Santos right now.
Listen, Dustin came in this with hate in his heart, Mike, and I respect it. The other, look, if we're going to, and the other side of it, all right, Stephen Breiter wants the Casey O'Neill. There was a lot of people suggesting Casey O'Neill versus some combination of Joanne Wood, Alexa Grasso, winner or loser. So Stephen Breiter was one of those people. He said O'Neill is the real deal and will fight for the title before the end of 2023. I think that's a pretty safe estimate. Before the end of next year. Yeah,
it's possible. Yeah.
I hope they don't rush her, frankly. I mean, I hope she does go 3-0 or 4-0 this year. But it's going to be hard because she's going to jump up real quick in the rankings. And at some point, Valentina, she just wants to stay busy and get fights. I hope it's later rather than sooner because I just want Casey O'Neill to really have time to develop. But honestly, you might see that by the end of this year. I don't want that. The UFC just might not have a choice if Valentina wants to fight because of who else.
I don't think. No, she goes up to 130. She'll fight Tyler Santos, and then she's going to go up to 135 and fight whoever wins the rematch between Pena and Nunes.
I hope so.
You have to do that. You have to.
I don't know if that third Nunes fight ever happens. They keep talking about it, but
I think Pena's going to beat Nunes in the rematch anyways, and then you just do. Pena called for it, so let Pena try to exact that revenge, and let Shevchenko try to get that second title.
I mean, Pena definitely. If Pena beats Nunes again, if you're Valentina Shevchenko, you've got to go up there. I mean, it's just such a favorite. It's just such a fight you've already won once and is really favorable. She would be like a 3-1 favorite as the challenger, which is pretty messed up. But I think that's, and I might be wrong. I might be underselling it if we're being honest. For sure. She'd be a huge favorite over Juliana Pena. Nunes would be a bit closer, but like we said, we don't know if Nunes can get past Pena. Pena might have her number. I don't know if you mentioned this, Mike. What did you think of Bobby Green, Tony Ferguson?
That was a popular one. I know it was very high suggested in the comments.
Sure.
I listen. Bobby Green, again, kind of like Tai Tuivasa, you got to run him till the wheels fall off. I think you got to run him till the wheels fall off. He's very popular. He's super over. Let's go. Just if you want to throw him in there with Ferguson, fine. I'm okay with that. You want to give him Moicano, fine. Even the Connor idea, I'm not opposed to. It probably won't happen, but I'm not opposed to it. Like, give this guy a step up. I would love to see him in a main event in his next fight. Absolutely. Yeah. I'd love to see him in a headline spot.
Yeah, no, I love that matchup. Again, for some, I guess it's just really hard to predict what the UFC is going to do with Ferguson and what Ferguson wants to do. So that one's always tricky. And then another really popular one was the Wells Matthews rebooking, or as we call it in the MMA media, the Matthew Wells rebooking. Shout outs to Matt Wells of MMA Junkie. It's a shame that one fell through because we just really want to see that on screen. So, all right, sorry, let me get back to a few individual picks here. I'll run through these. This I think was a perfect matchup for Arlovsky from Samus Law. Arlovsky versus Rogerio de Lima, Blagoy Ivanov winner, UFC 274 May 7th. It's a bit farther down the road, so if Arlovsky wants to stay busy, I mean, he's gonna have to wait. But it'd be such a 2022 Arlovsky fight for him to fight Ivanov or de Lima. It's just this weird mucky fight. I'm into it.
I really enjoy the way that, like, I hope every person on earth can once in their lives experience the way that Andrei Arlovsky opponents look at him when they step in the octagon with him, because they're just mesmerized by him. Tanner Bozier was mesmerized by him. Jared Vanderaa is mesmerized by him. They're just like, wow. They hear Dreamweaver by Gary Wright in the background, like Wayne's World, like I said on the Twitter Spaces. Like they look at this guy like he's a hero. And the more they book these kinds of fights, Arlovsky's going to keep winning them because it's a real thing. Like it is a real thing. All these guys are falling into that trap because most of the heavyweights have been fans of the sport for so long, and they remember Arlovsky's early days. They remember him as UFC champion, and then they get the chance to step inside the octagon with him, and it's just like, wow, like that thing is real, and we're seeing it with every time Arlovsky fights. So, yeah, I mean that would probably happen again here, but yeah, maybe throw him in there with the vet and see.
They remember his hair. They certainly remember his hair back in the day. My goodness, the man had a magnificent mane. He had a few great hairstyles. So people, yeah, if for some reason you're not familiar with just how legendary Andrei Arlovsky is, just Google Andrei Arlovsky hair, and I'm sure Google Images will provide. UFC should sign Fedor and make Arlovsky versus Fedor 2. Yes, shout outs to Affliction. Rematch from the Affliction days, the infamous Arlovsky jumping right into a Fedor punch. We'll never know what he was thinking there. I'll keep going here, guys. Yeah, keep the comments coming. Very much appreciated. We also had from Seamus Law, Malkoun versus the Alex Pereira Bruno Silva winner. Man, if Alex Pereira wins, they're going to fast track him to a title. So I just don't see it happening. Silva de Andrade versus Adrian Yanez, and Jeremiah Wells versus Phil Rowe. I like that one. Four Corner Sports NY. Brunson versus Hermanson. I know Mike mentioned this one. I do think that's one of the best possible matchups for Brunson, so I like that one. Tuivasa versus John Jones for the interim title. I don't know how you guys feel about that one. Lewis versus Miocic. Again, it's just a fresh matchup we all want to see. And then O'Neal versus Jessica Ai if she loses to Manon Fiorot at UFC 272 on March 5th. At UFC MMA Newsnet likes Lawrence versus Randy Costa and Bobby Green versus Diego Ferreira. You can file that Ferreira matchup under like a fight that I swear had been booked. Apparently, it never has. I assumed they had at least been booked and fell through, but somehow they've never crossed paths.
Man, Lawrence versus Costa. That's a tough one for Costa. That's a real tough one for Costa.
Yeah, I think Randy Costa. I think obviously a super talented guy. And I think someone that the UFC, would want to get behind is in the future. But I think they need to be a little more delicate with this matchmaking. Again, it's hard. It's 135. There's so many killers. I don't know how much you can protect someone. But again, he's Costa. How many fights is he? Like 10, 11?
Something like that. Yeah. He came in at 4-0.
Yeah. And a very talented guy. But, I wish they could find a way to sort of build him up properly, but it's hard. It is hard at 135. Just you can bring in new people, and those guys are killers. I mean, it's just such a strong division right now, not just in the UFC but around the world. So, Braden O'Neal, Silva de Andrade versus Paiva, Wells versus Baeza, Grecian versus Prakniau, Derrick Brunson versus Uriah Hall Muniz winner. That fight's going down April 16th, Mike. It would be a rematch with Uriah Hall, and of course, a fresh matchup with Muniz. That actually makes a lot of sense. Again, Hall would want to get that win back, and Muniz wants someone higher above him in the rankings, which Brunson currently is. Regardless of if he beats Uriah Hall, I think Brunson will still be ranked higher. So definitely one with contender thoughts. Thank you for that one, Braden O'Neal. Marcus McGahee, I've given him plenty of love, but I will say, Mike, he was an advocate for the Casey O'Neill Jennifer Maia matchup. I know you think it's too soon, but I think we could see that this year, but I do think next is probably not where
I'm not against the fight, but I'm with you to the point where we don't need to rush Casey too quickly. And that's one of those that could be a trap fight for her. Although I would kind of favor Casey to win that fight, but that could be a trap fight based on the experience levels between the two of them.
Yes, definitely. Again, it's a high reward fight. We shouldn't say it's a high risk, low reward fight. That's a high risk, high reward fight. But again, it is the sort of thing where even if she won, I don't think people should be trying to get her into the cage with Valentina Shevchenko anytime soon. And Mike, you've outlined why it won't happen anyway, but I'm just worried that they might be left without a choice. She's just gonna beat the right people and end up there. By the way, I'm sorry, I want to read a comment from earlier, Mike. I don't know who said it. They said me versus you for the BMF title. Guys, that would be for the BFF title. And that's a title that we actually share together.
It's a tag team championship.
And would never fight over. Not to be confused with the BTL championship that I have with Kristen King. Shout out to Kristen King out there.
That's true.
My BTL partner. We will team up soon on the show. The timing just hasn't been right. He also Blood Diamond versus Pete Rodriguez. Sure, why not? Loser leaves 10. Why not? Right? Poor Pete Rodriguez got thrown into a hell of a matchup with Jack Della Maddalena on short notice. Good on you, Pete. I know it's an opportunity. You got to take any opportunity you can to get into the UFC, but that was a horrible matchup for Pete Rodriguez. Blood Diamond, probably a little more history.
That's the exact matchup.
Well
that's
done.
That's the actual pick right there.
Marcus McGahee, he don't miss. Guys, he don't miss. Liam Perry, another, of course, of our favorites. Lawrence versus Tony Kelly. De Andrade versus Castaneda. Again, a lot of people want that. And Wells versus Nico Price. And he just had this to say about Roxy, a really nice comment. Sad to see Roxy retire, but she's doing it for the right reasons. Many fighters don't listen to their bodies and carry on way past due. Roxy, for the 2022 UFC Hall of Fame, for what she has done for women's MMA and the sport in general. I would love to see that. I don't know if that happens anytime soon, but she lives in Vegas. I think she has a good relationship with Dana White in the UFC. I could certainly see her being inducted sometime in the future. Maybe even 2022. I'm not sure what they're... Again, I don't think the UFC has an official sort of policy where like, oh, you have to have been inactive for 5 years. I think they pretty much just play it by years. So that would be very cool. So thank you, Liam Perry, for that suggestion. Only a few people on Twitter left. Barry O'Reilly. Mike Barry O'Reilly wants to applaud you for how you handled his mic check last week. He mic checked you on. He said you criticized Kopp versus Sumadaerji, and he just the class and aplomb with which you handled these situations. He's just like, well done. He's proud. I think Barry O'Reilly is proud of you.
He caught me on a good day.
He got you. You're lucky. You're lucky. Again, South Carolina Mike is a different guy. I don't know how many bodies there would be in the chat and in our DMs if you had not left the hellhole that is New England.
My wife's going back there today, actually.
Oh, I feel so sorry for her. God bless her. Jeremiah Wells versus Kuramagomedov from Eagle FC. I was like, I don't know if we can match people up with like that, but I don't mind people going outside the box. But I don't know if Kuramagomedov is leaving Eagle FC anytime soon. But again, maybe they have some working relationship with the UFC in the near future. Silva de Andrade versus Chito Vera 2. That would be pretty sick. I'm kind of into that. Arlovsky versus Chris Barnett, win, lose, or draw against Martin Buday on April 16th. What do you think of that?
No, I don't like it.
You don't like it? Why?
No, and listen, I said this about Chris Barnett after he beat John Vellante. You just throw him in there with like top 70 guys. Like that's how you batch Chris Barnett because you just want to see him style and win. This guy's not going to fight for titles. He knows he's probably not going to fight for titles. And maybe someday, who knows? What a story that would be if freaking Chris Barnett fought for a UFC title. But we kind of saw what happens when he faces these bigger vet guys. It doesn't really go that well.
Yeah, the Rothwell fight.
We saw the Rothwell fight. I know it's short notice, but still, like I feel like we would see a lot of that in those situations. But you just throw Barnett in there with like. You do the Joaquin Buckley build with Chris Barnett, where you just throw him in there with fun strikers and to a point where we're just expecting a knockout. We are just expecting a KO. Those are the kinds of matchups you book Chris Barnett in. I like the Buday fight. I think that's one of those types of fights where someone's getting finished and we're going to see a Chris Barnett walk out and they better show the whole thing and he dances all the way to the octagon.
Yeah.
And dances out of it. It's fun stuff.
I agree. Just to have him do fun stuff, and if he happens to flip ass backwards into a title fight someday, like Mark Hunt did once upon a time, then you book it. But you don't. Yeah, you don't book fights for Chris Barnett thinking like, oh, how does this get him to the top 20? Just get him top 15, top 10. It's like, nah. Let's just let him kick ass and do crazy stuff. Barry Riley also says this situation. He says Izzy moves to 205. Obviously not crazy. We saw him compete for the title. He has said he's not done chasing the light heavyweight championship. Barry Riley says, I know crazier things have happened, but let's say he beats Cannonier and he would beat Strickland as well. The only ones that might cause him problems are Hamza or Muniz, but they are a long way from a title shot. I don't know if Muniz is that far. So it would just hold the division up. Izzy moves up, vacates the title. Cannonier fights the winner of Whittaker versus Strickland. Oh, we're making Cannonier wait again? No, come on. Cannonier would be one half of that interim title fight if they or vacant title fight if they did something like that. I'd like the creativity, but
yeah. You do, yeah. What you do, like, yeah, you do. Cannonier gets the title shot. You do Strickland versus a Rockhold or something like that. Just throw Strickland in there with anybody. Like, give him one more fight. Whoever, if he wins, he's next. Andre Muniz is interesting because if he beats Uriah Hall and wants to turn around relatively quickly, I think you give him the Derrick Brunson fight. You give it to Muniz.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
Brunson's
Yeah. I agree.
the passing of the torch kind of fight
Yes.
potentially. And if Muniz beats Derrick Brunson and puts him and stops him, which there's a very good chance he would, if that fight ever it gets to the ground, then you got your next guy. And then we got to remember Alex Pereira too, because the UFC is going to try to do whatever they can to try to get that fight done before Izzy goes to 205. So we'll see.
Rashad John in the comments says Ariel Helwani versus Jed Meshew in a heel versus heel matchup. I mean, I really think that has to come to BTL someday. Fingers crossed we can make that happen. Jed Meshew wants all of that smoke. He's wanted a piece of Helwani for a long time. No, you know what, Mike? That's inaccurate. He doesn't want a piece of Helwani. He wants the whole damn thing. So
that'd be fun.
Whether that happens on your show, perhaps some other piece of MMA fighting programming, fingers crossed we make that happen. But I've seen a lot of people want to see something like that. So yeah, a couple more from Twitter. Timmy Osho, I like his suggestion of Moicano versus Damir Ismagulov, and our man in Denmark, Toke Girding Jensen. Our first time hearing from you, sir, in 2022. So welcome back. Also likes Kyler Phillips versus Randy Costa. I did mention that before, I think. Did I say De Silva? Deandra. Anyway, Kyler Phillips versus Randy Costa, and Ulberg versus Marcin Prachnio. Sure. Just a handful to go through here, guys. I just got a few emails I want to read, and we're almost done here, and a few Instagrams. Thank you everyone who has tuned in, by the way, to this live edition. Again, we're not going to do this all the time, but for big shows and of course Jake Paul fights, you probably will be seeing our lovely faces on a Sunday morning or Sunday word time, wherever it is you are. Jay Donaghy coming in. And I just want to mention, he said O'Neal versus Blanchfield and called it Mike Heck's nightmare. You would hate that fight.
A lot of people would. I wouldn't hate it. I would hate it right the second, but I wouldn't hate it like ever.
But not next.
No,
doesn't make a lot of sense. Our pal Casey Carpenter. I read it before the show, Mike, but I want people to know about this. They said, great work this week. Happy birthday to Mike. It was Mike's birthday on Saturday. And he should do a shoey. Mike, pretty adamantly against it. I'm not a fan either. Mike, I would not make you do that. But people do an honorary. If you people imbibe, if you indulge in shoeys, please do one for Mike during the Super Bowl. Also to help him get over the fact that New England, didn't make this year. They didn't have a great chance, but it would have been cool to see again. So, and I'm sure they're not far away from it. They also like Arlovsky versus Lewis.
I don't mind that. That's fine.
It feels like it's time.
It's fine.
Doesn't it? It feels like they've been dodging each other for too long. It feels like it's time.
Yeah.
And Joe Young, our last email, he says, "Your Melbourne matchmaker here." I think it was Joe who corrected me before and said, even though Melbourne is the correct way to say it, if you're not from, if you don't have an Australian accent, you're not from Australia, like Melbourne is perfectly acceptable. Mike, what do you think of this one? One of these names has a fight book, but Casey O'Neill versus Lauren Murphy. Now, Joe says, I know Murphy is scheduled to fight Miesha Tate. Win or lose, I feel like she will not fight Valentina. Yes, that's true. Yes, obviously. Murphy has a decent name to give O'Neill the rub. Rankings wise, Murphy would be a big step up in the rankings, but I feel like betting wise, O'Neill would be the favorite. So I do think, Mike, regardless of what happens with Miesha Tate, we could see Lauren Murphy be next in line for Casey O'Neill.
Yeah, it's possible. But again, I don't know. We'll see.
I kind of like it. I kind of like the idea. I like the thinking there because, again, Lauren Murphy probably is not close to another title shot, but man, I do think I don't think she's anywhere near retiring, and I think they got to find creative ways to use her. So that might be the way to do it. And let's close out with our Instagram. Gosh, our wild boys. These guys are. I don't even know where to begin with these guys. Okay, first let's start with a newcomer, Perth Sports Guy, and I'm gonna shout out his blog. I checked it; that doesn't seem anything offensive. So, Perth Sports Guy, Perth, by the way, guys, obviously in Australia, PERTH, PerthSportsGuy.wordpress.com. So show the man some love, give the man some clicks. Thank you for sending in. He didn't know how to. He wasn't trying to send in questions. Well, now you'll know from now on, Perth Sports Guy, for listening. And if you've listened before, we say it at the end of every show. Anyway, Barry Green versus either McGregor or Diaz. Winnable for all and would be a straight boxing fest. The bill would be nuts. Green would be cheap. UFC likes that. Relative unknown. So Nate and Connor would get paid. I would hope that Barry Green would get paid as well. Naoya Inui bitch. They said they changed their obscene username. This is still obscene. Okay. What was it before? Maybe there was an F word in there. I don't remember.
Oh God.
Casey O'Neill, Grasso Wood winner, Tai Tuivasa, Aspinall, Volkov winner, Hanata Moicano, Drew Dober, Ricky Glenn winner. All right, I don't want to read out all these. Dad Jackson always coming with some wild stuff. Also likes Bobby Green versus Nate Diaz. And Mike asks, could Lewis win the title in the PFL?
Could Derrick Lewis?
Yes, I'd have to know who's in it this year.
There's
I mean, it
chaos
depends.
in my
I don't
house
think
right now. I apologize.
That's fine. I don't think they've announced the roster yet for the 2022 season, if I'm not mistaken. Verdum would presumably be in there.
He'd do well. I think he'd make it at least to the finals. He might win it. Who knows?
I'm just trying to think. Verdum, Bruno Capolozza. I think he won, right? I think he was last year's champion. Yeah, he'd do well against a lot of these guys. There are a lot of guys who could kind of muck things, that kind of make fights ugly. But I think Derrick Lewis is better than those that I'm giving him credit for. So, oh, no, Nui bitch is watching live and just DM'd me and this. Oh, I tried to change it. I'm sorry. Well, you just made me swear again, and I already did that earlier, Noya. So, you should feel terrible. Tune coming in with Moicano versus Gillespie. Matt Bradbury again, also someone else trying to keep the Wells versus Means fight alive, the Matt Wells matchup. And I want to close out. Matt Bradbury had a lot of other good picks, he always does, but I want to close out with. Oh, sorry, I should show some love. Sorry, Daniel Markoulis, a first timer, says Wells versus Matthews. Rebook it.
I already read Daniel Markoulis. Come on.
Wait, that was that. Oh, you got the Daniel Markoulis doubling up.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh,
Never
I'm
again.
sorry. Oh, okay. Was he a first timer for you as well?
No.
Why would he send it to me also?
I don't know, because he wants maybe the guarantee. Don't do that.
Should I block him?
No, don't block him. We've already said his name. We said his pick already. He's good.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. I will remember now that you're a doubling upper. All right, let's get to our pal Michael Conifray, who runs the wonderful Otno and MMA fighting memes page. People, please follow that page, subscribe, like it, like all the stuff on there. It's hilarious. He had some great comments. They said, I think Michael says, I think Khabib's soul left his body and entered Jeremiah Wells. I don't know what that means. Now that Jed is a full-time member of MMA Fighting, I think it's time he has his own show. My idea. Jed and an outside guest have a chat on an upcoming fight card, and it's called The Asshole's Guide to UFC 271, for example. I sent the idea to Jed. He didn't seem against it. I think I told him, I suppose it's a compliment. Jed's just laughed and said, I'm a truth teller. So he didn't say no. Malkoun versus Rodolfo Vieira. And Michael calls this Dad Bod versus Chad Bod. Ouch. Still wants the quote-unquote Gemini man matchup between Victor Henry and Kyler Phillips. I don't think they look that much alike. And finally, is there anybody that looks more like an actual boxer in the octagon than Bobby Green? I don't think so. He's earned a big fight. Give him Michael Chandler.
Sure. That was a pot. Yeah, I've seen a few of those.
I love that. Make that happen. That would be one of maybe my number one, and maybe my magic wand picks, other than fixing the heavyweight division, the top of it. I love Bobby Green versus Michael Chandler.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like the UFC is trying to do Chandler versus Ferguson. Maybe the loser of that fight gets Bobby Green. I'm fine with either of those two guys. So sure.
I see Wes S asking in the comments, where do we send the Otno picks? It's funny. This is where we mention it. So Wes S and anyone watching who hasn't sent in picks before, you can hit me up, guys, on Instagram. All my DMs are open on all my social media. Hit me up on Instagram at Alexander KK Lee, on Twitter at Alexander K Lee, just the 1K on Twitter, or email me. Guys, you can hit me on my work email, alex.lee@sbnation.com. Hit me up on any of those. Mike, where can they reach you?
We can do Instagram, M_HeckJR. That's where you send the pics, and then we'll go from there. Twitter, you can find us. AK is very organized with that stuff. I just do the Instagram DMs, and we appreciate everybody. So,
and please try not to hit up both of us. All right?
Yeah,
please
no double dipping.
No double. Marcus,
you don't double dip the chip. You don't do it.
Marcus on Instagram. I see your spreadsheets in my DMs too. You're not getting that one past me.
100%. Okay.
Okay.
So live edition has ended. We'll be back live again March 6th after UFC 272, headlined by Masvidal versus Covington. But this show continues on the MMA Fighting Podcasting Network because there is a UFC event next week. It is UFC Vegas 48. It was supposed to be headlined by Rafael dos Anjos versus Rafael Fiziev. That fight is now the co-main event of UFC 272. So the new main event is Johnny Walker versus Jamal Hill. Then we got Kyle Dawkins versus Jamie Pickett. Jim Miller is back against Nicholas Mota. Joaquin Buckley versus Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Parker Porter, Alan Bodeau. Jesse Strader, Chad and Ellinger. Chaz Skelly, Mark Striegel. Mario Batista, Khalid Taha. No, actually, I believe Taha's out of that fight. So,
oh no,
maybe an opponent to be announced. Diana Belbita versus Gloria DePaula. Jessica Rose Clark is back at Stephanie Egger. And a name that comes up very often on to the next one is back for his second UFC fight in his normal weight class at 145. David Onama versus Gabriel Benitez.
Exciting.
Absolute banger.
Good matchup
on that card. So that's the card as of right now. And we will see you next week. And just an important lesson for our Otno fans, old and new. Always remember, don't take this stuff too seriously. MMA is supposed to be fun, and we'll have fun once again on the MMA Podcasting Network, talking UFC Vegas 48 right here on to the next one, the podcast. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Go Bengals.
Yes.